Welcome to Queer Therapist Talk Wayward, episode 7, where we'll be talking about Wayward episode 7, Ascend. I'm so
Yay!
excited. We're getting close to the
So
end of the
excited.
series. Oh my goodness. And we have one of my favorite, our favorite, I think, but one of both of our favorite people
Totally.
here ever, Jules Peithman. Did I pronounce your name right?
Yeah, it's
Peithman?
Python. Yeah.
Pythman.
I think
Thank
you
you.
said it. Yeah, it's like
Okay.
Python, except Python.
I love
Python.
that.
I love that.
Jules Peithman. LMFT. Thanks for being here. So
Thank
excited to
you for
hear your
having
thoughts
me.
about this episode. We get extra culty in this episode. I'm excited to talk to you about all things cultiness on this
Yay.
episode. Jules, Em and I both know from the California Institute of Integral Studies, where we teach. Jules is now teaching with us too. I think you'll be teaching with us in spring, right?
Potentially. I make a
Potentially.
little drop in here and there.
That's wonderful. Do you want to say anything about your therapy practice, Jules, or what people should know about what you're up to?
Well, okay, what about my therapy practice? I guess it focuses on working with people at the intersections of QT BIPOC and or neurodivergence. I really like to work with people around grief, life transitions, relationships, anything queer, weird. Some people like to call it witchy. And yeah, my work focuses on like ecotherapy approaches, somatic, existential, transpersonal, all of those things. So that's a little bit about me. I work with individuals and couples right now.
And you said you were DJing these days. Do you want to say more about that?
Oh my
Oh
gosh,
my
I'm
gosh.
nervous. Well, yeah, I
Um,
am DJing these days. So I haven't revealed fully my DJ and producer name, but look out for me soon.
I love that, and I will. Hi, How are you doing today?
Oh, I'm doing great. I'm so excited to talk about Ascend, and I'm so happy to be back together with you, Avery, and also with Jules. This is like a reunion. Jules and I have not seen each other in, we were just saying years,
Years.
strangely, but we've like been able to work together in different ways. And I'm just so excited that this is another way that we get to connect and collaborate. And I get to hear your beautiful brain and see your beautiful face and just
Oh,
learn from you and like kiki with you and think through these really weird and complicated things that come up in this very strange show together,
yeah.
which is so fun. Yeah. So,
Let's do
but
it.
yes, I'm doing well, and I'm excited to talk about Ascend. Where to
Lot.
begin?
And it starts in 1974 with a bunch of
I
hippies
don't
and a guy who
know.
looks like Charles Manson.
OMG, he totally looks like Charles Manson.
Yep.
I feel
Great
like Charles
casting
Manson
choice.
is deeply implied here.
Deeply
Um,
implied. Great
Deeply.
casting.
Uh-huh.
Also, great casting also of a young Evelyn. I thought she was wonderful, like very
Yeah.
embodied of the energy and spirit of with what Toni Collette made, and I just feel like it's great casting choice.
Yep.
One of the things that I noticed right away in that early cut is just the way that oh so quickly the Charles Manson cult leader kind of humiliates one of the underlings, which I think is a theme that then gets woven through, like the use of humiliation and
Mm.
shame as a tool of holding on to power and making one's underlings stay under. Which, we can talk more about in all of the other characters, but that was one of the things I noticed in this clip. It's the origin story of the door thing in
Yes.
this
Mm-hmm.
little cult thing in the beginning. Mouths and doors. I have a big note here that says mouths and doors.
Mhm.
Um,
Portals.
mhm.
Portals.
Yeah, and leaping through.
Yeah, and that he had to go through in order to let go of everyone,
Hmm. Yeah.
like to transcend or ascend, as it were. And it kind of jumping ahead a little, it makes me think about when someone's talking about attachment and just saying like, Evelyn taught us like attachment basically is bad and wrong and we shouldn't. And it creates suffering. And it made me think about this like Buddhist concept, obviously, of like, attaching is suffering. And that's just like not what it means. It doesn't mean we don't
Yeah.
have connections with people. And it doesn't mean that we don't have love and community and all of those things. It just means that, right, when we attach too much to an idea of something, it can create um, suffering in the world, but it doesn't mean that we don't find people, and it doesn't mean that we don't have relationships, and it doesn't mean that we don't have that attachments with caregivers are is not meaningful. But it's just kind of this warped, I think, the beginning of what I see as a warped spiritual concept that's interwoven in the whole origin story of the cult. And we talked a little bit beforehand about like there's so much origin story stuff here in this episode too. Yeah.
Yeah, I'm not even really sure where to begin because it's like all of these different constellations of people and their origin stories, and it's like we could go into anything, but I'll just sort of share what I was sharing a little bit before, which is like the whole vibe of this is like, what are the origin stories of people? And so, like, this beginning, and towards the end, we sort of see like the way in all of the dynamics and like the complexities of how a cult is born. And we see this way in which, like, with Evelyn's origin story, in some ways, like she broke off from the original cult leader by saying, like, she said that the original cult leader said that the green door was like just a symbol, but she really believed that like it needed to be real, that you really did need to like leave everything behind. And so we see the way that was born. And then towards the end, we see the way how Laura uses that rift that Evelyn creates as a way to sort of connect everything together and tell the story of, oh, she took away our bodily autonomy and I can help you and we are family. And what did Evelyn take from you? So Laura represents the introduction of a good mother by making Evelyn the bad mother. And we see these like good, bad dynamics throughout cults in general, I think, but it's like we need to create a bad other in order to create a powerful good. So, I mean, I could say so much about that and the way that it's like connected to colonialism and all of like these larger
Yeah.
cult dynamics that we live in that we don't call cults, but I'll just start there.
Thank you. I love that start. Oh my God. This idea of like the cults that we live in. I have to share just like a small story. When I was working at as a writing tutor, I worked with a student who was trying to write a piece about coming out of a cult, and they had been in a legit like cult, like kind of raised in a cult and went through the whole like de-brainwashing process. And then, after that, like kind of official process of de-brainwashing, they basically have to like then program you to like culture, which is a cult. So that was part of what she took away from that whole experience, is that she really just traded one cult for
That's
another.
wild.
But like that was
Right.
evident to her in the process, was like, oh, like I just got deprogrammed all these ways of thinking about the world, and then in order to engage with society I have to get reprogrammed in something, because that like every interface of society has all of these cult like rules and
Yeah.
hierarchies and govern the way that everything is governed, from like emotional expression to gender roles, and all of that stuff just is so cult-like and arbitrary. In this cult, there's some common themes that pass down that have to do with a lot of like trauma and like separating people from their families, which is often also a part of the cult story. What were you gonna say, Em? I saw you unmuted.
Oh no, I was just gonna say, like, yeah, everything is a fucking cult. Like everything. If you really look at it and you really think about it.
Yeah.
And it's just like so like it just like makes my heart drop hearing the two of you talk because it's so real and and I feel like yeah, constantly thinking about in what ways are we participating consciously and unconsciously in the perpetuation of the whatever the different cults are that we're a part of.
Yeah, I think in our sort of like pre-discussion, what we were going to talk about here, what I feel like is important to point out, and that is like we were talking about how each iteration, this cult, and it doesn't, yeah, I'm just thinking about like how cult is like similar to like culture, like in the wording, and my mind is kind of going in that direction. So I'm gonna just put that over here in that constellation. What does it look like to break outside of cult? dynamics. And there's this way in which like they are reperpetuating a lot of the same shit, because it's like Evelyn broke people off from like a primary attachment figure, like the mother through the mantra and like I don't know what she does with the kids. And then Laura's apparently like restoring that, but with like the same tactics. And like we were talking about before, it's kind of like, yeah, it's colonialism and imperialism. It looks different throughout time and histories, but it's the same tactics. And we're not actually breaking outside of it. So I think that there's something deeper, a deeper undercurrent in this show around what does it really mean for us to do healing work, not just as therapists and people who are caring for children, teenagers, adolescents, and younger in this very transitional phase. What does it look like for us to create a better world and a better, quote, better, gooder, whatever that means, way of being? I think that it requires a type of theory and practice around being like creative, like not just outside of the box, but in like a galaxy far, far away. Like, what do we want the future of our healing for children to look like, or like to step outside of like a cult like this, or just the larger cult dynamic of the world? It's probably not gonna come from like the way we've been doing everything now. So I don't know, that's just kind of like a deeper undercurrent for me around this, is thinking about healing, thinking about new worlds we're creating or recreating, and just using the same manipulative tools.
One of the things that Dwayne says in this episode, I remembered while you were talking, which is every parent fucks up their kid. That's why we stopped having them. So like even this big
Right.
thing that they did, like they tried so hard to stop repeating cycles. That's so woven through this episode. And so I think like one of the things, especially like with this in the context of white culture coming from like a white creator with patterns of like whiteness and lineages of whiteness kind of woven in here, one of the things that is being captured is the way that generations just kind of like flip flop and like create the opposite of what their parents did, but really that opposite just creates a different set of problems, or maybe even the same kind of set of problems. And so all of that, I think, is really about like wanting one right way for it to be, which is like such a function of white purity and white supremacy and colonization. Is like wanting there to be like one way that's the right
Yeah.
way. And it feels to me like when I heard you say creativity, Jules, I was thinking of just like the creativity of the moment, that humanistic, like be alive in the moment, that's that would be radically different than like being super boundaried is the right way, or being super permissive is the right way, or but just like trying to be actually available and attuned in the moment to what is happening, what's the right situation with your child. I know a lot of parents are out there doing that, but I think that's what's harder to like support as a culture or a community, because it's harder to support a lot of people to be doing things creatively and differently than to try to find like what is the right way and how do we make everybody do it. A serious effort in this show to break cycles that I think almost every parent does. I was thinking about this in terms of queerness too, and how do we break cycles as queer people? Like, I know a lot of queer folks are parenting. Zoe and I have been on this project of seeing if we want to parent, and it's, yeah, I mean, it feels to me like there's some narrative allegory maybe throughout this show about just the cult of parenting, because that is in a way like a lot of like how this ends, and we won't skip too far to episode 8, but yeah, it's a lot of Alex's investment in this is like, let me be a trans guy with a normal life who has a baby and a wife, and ends up kind of like entering a cult to do so, like perhaps we all do who are queer people trying to parent. Just say,
Whoa.
just some thoughts.
Just some thoughts. No big deal.
I mean, Evelyn says being born is non-consensual. And I am not behind Evelyn, like in any way. And I'm interested in that idea, right? As we're talking about like colonialism and like reproduction and recreation and like for just like a lot of things, the earth, the sun. And I'm not saying that people shouldn't have babies, I'm not saying any of that, but I am curious about this idea. The other thing that's coming up as we're talking about this is the false notion in this cult, and then I think also in like a larger cultural system and society, of that we can just heal trauma and be done. Like Laura says something like, well, look, she said we would leave through the thing and then our intergenerational trauma would be healed. And it didn't happen. But look, I can
Mm-hmm.
help you do it. Look at what I'm offering to you or whatever. And it's so obviously, who doesn't want that? Like, if you honestly didn't know and understand the way that trauma works, and you heard that and you were taught or brainwashed that, or even had a glimpse of that, who wouldn't want that? But
Right.
it's just, you can't, I mean, it's impossible. It's just not how it works.
Yeah, I've been thinking about that piece too. I'm still holding curiosity around like birth being non-consensual. Like that kind of hit me. Like when it hit Lila, I looked at Lila and I just like looked in myself and I was like, wait, what? And I think what you're saying brings up for me around, this desire to heal, and like I think we're talking about like the desire to heal and how to actually do it. And this idea that like we can somehow cut ourselves off from like a lineage and be like, oh, I'm healed now. Like I think that's
Mhm.
exactly what is wrong with current ways of healing. We're not, unfortunately, like I'm an individual therapist, but I think that's not the only way that we're going to heal. Like in my mind, when I work as a therapist, I'm thinking about there's sort of like horizontal healing in this lifetime, in this sort of generation. And then there's the vertical, there's the ancestral, but it's not just two cult leader generations ahead, like Laura to the
Right.
Manson looking alike dude. It's deeper rooted,
Mm.
larger things around like we don't get to see how Evelyn grew up and how she even ended up being in a cult in the first place. Like, what was the lineage of her family throughout history? Like, where did she come from? And like, I think that there's this idea that we have nowadays in this like larger archetypal, historical, political, social time that like, oh yeah, we can heal without healing the earth, the environment.
Right.
Like, oh, we're disconnected from that. We're disconnected from our lineage. We could just leap through this door with some fucking psychedelics and we're going to be healed. Or like, oh, now I've healed with plant medicine and we're all one and this and that. And it's like, okay, that's great to do that lineage work, but we still live in this matrix where all of these different power dynamics are at play and these different levels of complexities of humanness exist. So like we can't just leap or ascend and pretend like our roots and our history and our ancestry don't exist, and to not take responsibility for how we came to be where we are, both like in the show, but it's like I'm having this like, this is what's going on in the show, and then there's like this larger vision of this is what's been happening, y'all. We need to build a new world. Do we not see? Do y'all see the mirroring here? Am I the only one?
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, it's the most individualistic white supremacist concept of like you can individually ascend and then be done.
And then be good and
And
be
then
better.
you, just you.
And then
Then
everything else is bad. And it can just hide in this collective and individual shadow of bad as
Mhm.
long as I feel good and I live in this reality that I perceive as good, which is a cult culture dynamic in Tall Pines. Like, this is fine.
And something that I have seen in some communities, particularly white communities, using psychedelics that is not ancestrally their medicine to be using, but this idea of like, I have done this now. I've almost appropriated, and I'm not hating on people who use psychedelics, but I've almost appropriated this thing that is culturally not mine. And now I have ascended, and now I am good. I am better,
Right.
and I've used this thing to get there, and I don't, almost like I don't need to do anything anymore. I've seen people like have this like these like awakenings and then be like, okay, well, I don't need to do therapy anymore. I don't need to, I'm good. It's like people who use fucking chat GPT to fix their fucking relationship problems and just think like it's all done and that's all they need to do. If anyone is listening, do not use Chat GPT
Please.
to fix your life, okay? And don't use it in general because it's killing the earth, but also don't use it to fix your life, okay? That is, I know it's not related to what we're talking about, but I just have to say it.
You just have to have a moment. Yeah. Yeah, I think there's like a constellation here too about just healing and psychedelics and plant or not just plant, but like also, yeah, I don't know what you would call it, like animal psychedelic medicine, because they're using the animal in this show. But I think that there's also something around that here as well, and the intersection of that and cult dynamics.
There's a real desire that I get so tired of in psychotherapy and everyone else of just like looking for the panacea, looking for the one thing, looking for the answer.
Yeah.
It feels so embedded in white supremacy, similar to that thing I was saying earlier of just like looking for like the fix. It's going to fix everything for everybody, and like taking all the nuance and complexity and unique social contexts and all of the things out to try to find like one answer that works for everybody. Psychedelics out, and the way that the field is treating psychedelic medicines absolutely feels like that to me right now, which drives me a little batty. Wish we would stop doing that. It never works. But yeah, in the context of this, I'm thinking of some things that came up with Stacy's Leap in episode 4, listening to you all, just like this thing she says, it's the way to path to total health or something like that, which Stacy says when she looks at Rabbit earlier, like, have you ever seen the picture of total health? So there's this idea that we can have like some kind of absolute perfect health psychologically, and she also says that creepy phrase again when she's getting ready to leap of it'll be like it never happened. And
Will
between
it?
episodes of 4 and episode 7, I really feel like what I saw was this psychedelic seems to, and this process of the leap and the psychedelic, they really seem to be implying that Evelyn is erasing memories with that, like wholesale, like maybe even erasing all your memories of your parents are gone. It's part of like what Evelyn took from people that I think comes up at the end of this episode in that circle-y scene with Laura, just that Evelyn has really taken out pieces of the psyche. And again, kind of back to just like the vulnerability of people who have trauma often have fragmented memories. Evelyn seems to like creep right into that place where the fragmented memories exist, and with this leap kind of erase them, do some pretty profound like erasing of or rewriting. I still don't think Lila killed her sister. I think that Evelyn completely jacked around her traumatized fragmented memory and made that a story that she could exploit. But she really sneaks into that place where trauma has fucked up somebody's memory. And then with this thing of the leap, does something in there with the psychedelic. It's so bad. But trying to give people this thing that everybody wants of like, my trauma will just be gone. I'll cut it off and be rid of it. It's so sad to work with clients and have to be the one to explain to them that that's not going to happen. That that's not how trauma works at all. It's so painful to have to let go of that fantasy that you can leave it behind forever.
And that you can't ever go back to before. But integration you can do, and it's not going to happen through any of the shit that Evelyn's dealing out here. I'm curious, just kind of coming back to some of the queer and trans again, like beautiful representation I personally feel in the show all the way around. But these moments where, let's see, Alex's watch goes off and he just like very quietly kind of says like, yeah, it's just a reminder to take my shot. And it's such a it's almost like a snapshot that you would take of just two people talking at a campfire. I love that there's no over explanation. This keeps happening. It's just like built into the fabric of any other scene. There's no like, let's stop and, well, tell me a little bit about your testosterone. Well, I started taking tea. Tea is this. There's no, do you know what I mean? Because we don't need that. We don't need that.
Yeah.
And if people who are watching don't understand it, they will get it on some level. And if they don't, they'll look it up or ask questions and figure it out. And that's their work to do. It's not Mae Martin or Alex's work to educate us about that. It's just like a normal part of like what he has to do, And I just love that. I'm for this. Every time this kind of thing happens in the show, it makes me so happy.
I had a little gathering of folks at my house, and we were ended up talking about this show, and like a couple of folks named that as like maybe the most important part of the show for them, is that there was a trans identity in it that was just like there, but not really what the show is about at all. Or like in these
Yeah.
moments where it even shows up pretty overtly, it's not explained or belabored and nobody's tripping out about it. And yeah, that kind of just kind of like routineness of that existence is so precious to so many people. And so
Mhm.
appreciate you naming that.
It gets my mind thinking about like, okay, the other queer shit going on. Like specifically in this episode, the sapphic vibes between Laura and Rebecca or Rabbit. Yeah, can we talk about that?
Yeah, also
Um,
interesting that
so
she
hot.
called her Rebecca. She and everyone else calls her
Yeah.
Rabbit. So I think that's
That
also kind
is
of an
such
interesting
a power
intimacy.
move.
It's a power move and
Yes.
intimacy of like,
And
remember,
intimacy.
you're
Mhm.
Rebecca back to when we were together or whatever. Yeah.
Yeah, I also like kind of love the joke about one of like how the counselors, how like Lila and Abby were surprised that one of the counselors like partner was a man. There's like this person who fits sort of like this archetypal sort of aesthetic of like a butch like lesbian, and then when they find out who like her partner is, they're like surprised. Like they're so like to me, like Abby and Lila are so just like they're just queer. Like they just are how they are. But back to Laura and Rebecca. I think it's interesting to look at like how Evelyn uses different manipulation tactics to control, and then Evelyn, I'm getting confused. Laura uses that too. Like Laura uses that sort of sexual energy between her and Rebecca or Rabbit as control. And there's sort of like this, if you look into that scene a little bit more, you get to see a little bit more of the multi-generational manipulation. So is it cool if I sort of like go into like what I was like
Yeah.
analyzing there, just in
Yeah,
those
I would
few
love to
lines of
hear.
that interesting hot seat, weird body
Mhm.
work situation? Okay, so Laura's story is that she was shitty to Rabbit because of Evelyn, and that Evelyn drove a wedge between them because she was threatened by, quote, what they had. And we see Evelyn doing that between Abby and Lila too, because like I don't know. I don't really feel like a vibe between them, but they definitely have like, I don't know, the potential for later on potential like platonic life partner vibe. I don't know. And Rabbit was so jealous of the attention that Evelyn gave to Laura. And I was writing, like, I wonder if that's why, like, what drove Rabbit's obsession to be Evelyn's favorite because Evelyn gave all the attention to Laura. And Laura sort of sells this idea to Rabbit that, like, oh, I love this place and what it can be. And she uses that along with like the lingering sexual energy between them to try to get like Rabbit on her side. And then when Rabbit sort of like holds back, like in that whole interaction, she has to make Rabbit bad. Laura's trying to convince Rabbit to join her side, and Rabbit asks her why she's even with him with Alex, and Laura responds by saying, he's the only love I have that Evelyn hasn't tainted. Therefore, implying that Rabbit is tainted and bad because you're bad with Evelyn bad. And so she's creating this framework to, oh, come be with me as good because Evelyn is bad. So that's all of what I took between
Oh my
like
God.
what I got from that scene. But I'm curious what y'all got from that scene or what you think about their dynamic.
Yeah, I
Like,
think
what's
it's
the point of it all?
beautifully said. And I feel like it's split city, right? Like you were saying, good, bad, come with me. There's also I think a tactic in there where she says, you had mentioned she was like, I don't want to leave. But Alex, I told Alex that we were going to leave. So then she's also giving Rabbit a secret to hold. So there's
Right.
intimacy.
Yeah, I mean, I think what I remember from just looking, the look on Rabbit's face in that scene is there's just like such a pleading behind their eyes of like, please don't leave me. That kind of vulnerability is so not okay in Evelyn's world where vulnerability is just like a thing to be utilized and exploited against people, but there's honestly so much vulnerability that I remember in Rabbit's eyes in that scene of kind of trying to keep a cold front on it, but basically like this question of like, why did you leave me? Is so tender under the what Rabbit is trying to do in this conversation. It's just basically trying to figure out if they have to or she has to get ready to say goodbye to Laura again or to let Laura go. It's such a big deal for Laura to say that she wants to stay, even though they don't acknowledge really the vulnerability or the intimacy of that between them. But it felt really kind of huge given where it felt like to me Rabbit was emotionally in that scene.
I still think just calling her Rebecca again is a way of saying, like, I know you, we have a connection, and you don't have to be a rabbit that just follows along like you are to
Mm-hmm.
Evelyn. You can be Rebecca with me. There's all of these subtle ways that she's like luring her in or trying
Yeah.
to.
Yeah, I think it's interesting to notice, like when you said that, Avery, I was like, oh shit. Laura is using a tactic of more like, okay, you can be more like longing, or you can be more of yourself, like you can be more like authentic with me, and you can be vulnerable in this different way. But she sort of, her manipulation is taking advantage of that, like, oh, you don't have to like hide parts of yourself, bring all parts of yourself and we can be one body. That's her thing, is like, we can be one body. And I think about the somatic part of that. Evelyn's using a bell in like a very sterile room with the hot seat type stuff, and then you're supposed to like talk shit to people you're in group therapy with, and it's very like harsh. So she's the harsh mother or whatever archetype, and then Evelyn is the soft mother, like a soft place to land, but they're both like manipulating in a different way. It's just making me think about like the mother archetype and how they both use it in different ways to manipulate. It's Evelyn's not good because she's soft, like just because she makes you cry and she hears how Evelyn like hurt you and took things away from you. Like she's still taking things away from you, or rather it's almost like, to me, I picture her as like this mega monster that's consuming everybody in this like circle, and she's becoming this mega monster as these different people are becoming a part of her as one body. With Evelyn, it felt like this breaking down of everyone, isolating you, tearing you apart, and you are like little parts of my system that function the whole, like help the whole system function. Like everyone's very much like, come join my body, like come be in my womb almost. Like there's this energy around that, especially as she's pregnant. Yeah.
Right. And that's right. That's the perfect ground to the cracks for Laura to come in and then say, like, let's get back together, basically. You're all broken down, you're all isolated, even though you're in community and you're serving these cult roles in the community. But we can come together. And right, I'm pregnant. I'm doing the thing that you're not supposed to do. Look at how subversive I am. I am subverting the cult paradigm by virtue of being pregnant to this alien baby that I don't even know. Like, I have such a weird relationship to. And she does say, like, later she's talking to Alex about her parents, and she's like, I read the news article about them, and it was like people I didn't even know. I mean, she is so disconnected from, she is so fragmented from her own experience. So we know where some of this comes from. But yeah, it's the perfect, it's the setup is perfect. And it's literally in the house, in the basement where it all began. You want to talk about a
That part.
cycle? A
Yes.
cycle. We're
Oh my
coming
God.
right back.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
We're going to do it over again. We're going to do it better this time.
Mm.
Like it makes me think about, as therapists, like how we're so ripe for like a parental projection. Like it makes me think about, like, I had a therapist who disclosed to me, like, yeah, like I noticed that once I became pregnant or became a mother, a lot more projections were coming up. Like my own projections were coming up in my own therapeutic process. Like when we terminated, I was like, oh, because she was going on like maternity leave. I was like, so sad. And it just brought up so much for me that I wasn't even like realizing, like stuff around separation from mother figure. And I just wonder about, yeah, it seems like Evelyn's using that to her advantage, that she's ripe for that motherly figure projection. Because in Evelyn's, I don't know, therapeutic, hypnotic mantra, whatever it is, it's like what is it? You're looking at the door, crying out for your mother. It's like specifically, it's like this breaking off specifically of the mother lineage. Like it has a lot of that energy. And then here Evelyn arrives as like this good mother, like almost giving Virgin Mary vibes. And she's like, I will bring it all back together, everything that's been broken. So those are just some sort of archetypes that are coming up for me as I'm thinking about this.
Well, in this episode, too, one of the things that we learn, and it comes out just so briefly when they're talking about like how Evelyn got to where she did in the conversation with Lila when she's in there, like, is that Evelyn's parents kicked her out and took her baby, is what she
Yes.
says. So, I mean, this is her mother wound, double-sided mother wound that she got before this all happened, having been deprived of her own ability to have children and to have parents. And so that's part of what she brings to this is the desire to be a mother and a kind of like thwarted mothering along with her hatred for parents and her parents. So, a lot of what she does makes sense from that point. It's wild to me in this show how casual murder is. So this is another example of like just like some casual murdering. Like, I don't like this cult leader anymore. She tells, Lila that she left the cult leader. She doesn't tell Lila that she murdered the cult leader. But like,
Right.
I'm just still holding that about this show, period. Like what the allegory of that, or like what we're supposed to be left with about that, or just a kind of like part of the wish of the show to leave things behind is that we wish it was so easy to murder. I don't know. It's a thing that happens in here in places that are surprising to me. Like I think the story would have worked just as well if we'd saw Evelyn like take some of the cult people and leave, but that's not what happens. They do, in fact, kill this person. And so,
Wild.
yeah,
But there it shows you like what she's capable of, even at that young
certainly,
age.
certainly,
Right.
Psychodynamically also like killing the father to become the mother, but then also, right, this person is capable of doing that and not just doing it like quietly at night on her own where no one knows, doing it in front of everyone else so that
Right.
everyone sees her power. And it's a very specific tactic.
yeah, and everyone's complicit, which is
Yes.
what she maintains that throughout this cult, like making sure that everybody feels complicit and together and part of the same bad decisions.
Right.
That somebody in town feels supported when they do an accidental or semi on purpose murder, and that's part of the ethos of the town too, is that you can get away with these things here.
And that Alex, this is juxtaposed with Alex's backstory that we get just a little bit of, Jules, you were
Yeah.
saying earlier, which is that he wished he had killed his dad, who
Yep.
was abusing his mom. That
Yeah,
he was complicit in his own way of just standing there frozen, which is a natural trauma response, particularly if you're a child and you don't have power, like, of course. But then his way of the cult he joins is the cult of law enforcement, right? In
Yeah.
order to feel powerful.
yeah. That
And
scene where
yeah,
he tells Dwayne that
yeah.
he had addicts and DV in his family.
Mm-hmm.
Dwayne drives drunk away from that scene,
Yeah.
which I didn't catch the first time, but the second time watching it I was like, oh my God, speaking of patterns repeating, like you're literally talking about both your parents were addicts and you wish you would have killed them, but like here's this dude who's a cop who's just gonna get in a car and drive completely wasted right now.
And I think Dwayne even like flicks him off, like as he's
Uh-huh.
getting in the car. He's just
Yeah.
like, what are you gonna do? Like, call the cops on me? He says
Right.
something like that.
Right.
Yeah, the casual killing is kind of, yeah, I don't know. It's like there's this feeling you get by just like watching it. Almost like even like as a viewer watching it, you get so sucked into it. And they play like Evelyn, I'm calling it Evelyn's mantra. they play her mantra like through the series. And so like the more you watch, the more you get like sucked into it. So there is this way in which like for me as a viewer, I just become comfortable with the casual killing, like even watching it,
Mm-hmm.
like the way that it's produced. And I really appreciate the writing because so much happens within like just one line. Like I wrote down some quotes from Evelyn when Lila goes to see Evelyn and she's like, okay, I want to know the rest of the story. So we get like the rest of the story. And Evelyn says, quote, until we open that door by whatever means necessary, we would be prisoners of the pattern. And in Evelyn's mind, she, quote, left, right? We don't, obviously, she didn't just leave. She killed somebody so that she could begin the real work. That's what she tells Lila. So it's just like so much happens, I think, with even just like a couple sentences of like the writing of what the characters say that like says so much about, yeah, what story is continuing the lineage and like what is the lineage of the story itself? Like we get so much of that in just these conversations here and there, and it just builds up to this feeling of like even I as a viewer am sinking into like casual killing, no big deal. Like this is just what's happening right now. What is the experience you had watching it?
Well, that's the way normativity is cult-like, is like anything can be normal. Like we can make anything normal. We can make casual killing kind of normal. Like I was simultaneously, as I was watching this weekend, I watched one of my favorite older movies, Tombstone, and then went down a rabbit hole of watching documentaries about Doc Holliday,
It's
who was
amazing.
like a gambler and back in the day that was normative in America, like in these Western
Sure.
towns, murder was a pretty normative part of life. There were certain reasons why you could murder. You could much more easily defend a murder than you can these days. Oh, like in some states we have these stand your ground laws, but I mean that was pretty common in the United States for a while. It was like if somebody was on your property, absolutely you could murder them and that was fine. So yeah, I mean you can make whatever rules you want in your cult and you can kind of casually adjust to whatever rules feel normal. I think we must have some hardware in us as human beings that's just pretty built to accept a societal rule and societal norms, and then like whatever those are in a particular locality. As humans we just seem to pretty unquestioningly at least start out there, and then we might ask questions down the road or we might not, but mostly we just accept things if they feel uh kind of like normalized by the people around us. I think that is part of what they were doing here, Jules. But I hadn't articulated it that way. But they create a set of norms here that's a little bit outside ours, but not that different. But it feels fine.
So I love that they use like the symbol of the toad. It's a toad, right? Can we just get that? Okay, not a frog, it's a toad. In my own process, when I was processing, maybe some, abusive dynamics I've been through in relationships in my own therapy, my therapist brought up this idea of like, it's kind of like if you put like, well, I think she said a frog in water, but I mean, frogs, toads, they're both amphibians. Let's just use this example. If you put a toad in water and like you heat it up, they probably won't jump out. Like they'll just stay there until like it slowly heats up and just die in that place. And I think that there's this way of like cult like dynamics where it's like there's little things you see it throughout the season, like little things that happen here and there. It's like, oh my gosh, like Alex just killed somebody because they escaped the school or institution and now somebody's dead. And then it's like all these little things start getting normalized, and then you're in this place where the pot is boiling and you're dying and you're no longer the same. And it's like even if Alex wants it, like there were so many moments throughout the season where I was like, he can't even leave. Like even if he wanted to leave, like there's so many things tying him. So I just love the use of the toad as like this like metaphor, because I don't know where my therapist got that metaphor from, but that's sort of like how I felt. And like a part of what brings me to talking on this podcast specifically about the cult like stuff is I'm what they would call an air quote recovering Catholic. I went to Catholic school for 12 years. It's a big part of my culture as a Filipina. And there were just like these ways of being that I just accepted because that's what I was taught to do. One of them being like accepting that I'm supposed to be hetero, especially as like a queer femme. That's what the optics of that like were sort of ingrained in me. So I have all of these feelings that have come up for me watching this because I'm like, yeah, I get how these subtle ways of being just like become normal.
I was raised really Protestant Christian, but like I just feel like Christianity, because it's such a mainstream religion, has really like lost sight of itself as a cult, whether it's the Catholic or Protestant version, but it very much started out there, and I think in so many ways still operates at a local level in so many people's lives as a cult. And yeah, so many people have accepted it that, you know, mostly as a society, broadly, we don't think about Christianity as a cult anymore, but
Yeah, I think what's the other piece that I kind of had hard time accessing because I was like, "Ugh, trauma coming up, is the way in which like growing up Catholic was actually like very healing and good for me in these weird ways. As I've done my integration and as I hold like other people who have like different faiths or spiritualities or like ways of thinking, it's like I don't think it was all that bad. Like there were some aspects of it that I won't get into that felt really harmful, and that continue to feel harmful. But I'm also like, we see that in the show too. Like there are a couple of times where I'm like, I don't know if this is all that bad for like this character or that character to like have a place to look at their trauma. Like maybe not in this way, but like some of the things that Evelyn says, like she throws like people's traumas in their face, but it's like some of the things I'm like, I think she's speaking to some truth here. Or like the way that the kids will throw truth at each other, like they speak to some little bits of truth. So it's like weird and confusing. And it makes me think like, how can we hold like that complexity too? Like of care for kids, but also like healing, like the complexity of like, yeah, we could be like really good therapists and it could be beneficial to our clients. And we're just a step away from the threshold of like dominance and power and manipulation. Like we're only a step or two.
It's not all just one thing. I mean, the splits don't work. I mean, it does. The cult is abusive in the show 100,000%. We all know this. And like you said, there might be some beneficial parts to it. There might be some truths in there. And it's like just holding all of it at the same time. And, there's a part where Laura says something like, oh, are they still giving? She's talking to Robert. She's like, are they still giving the drugs to the kids to leap? And she's like, yeah, a couple kids each year. And she goes, that's abuse. And I'm going, yeah, but also there's a lot of other abuse in that. Is that the only thing that you're thinking is abuse? But I think like, I was laughing at that, thinking about that, like what is being seen as abusive and not. But there's so many parts of it that are wonderful. I mean, music as a healing modality, like arts-based things, a different shit that they're doing, community building, like there's good stuff. Like there's like practices in non-attachment, spiritually speaking, can be really, really wonderful and positive if it's done in non-manipulative ways that aren't about, just making caregivers all bad or making attachments to people all bad. But I think that's where cults can get tricky, is because of that, because they're not all just not, some of them are just all made up bullshit things, but a lot of them touch on these aspects of human nature and human sort of like desires and truths and wants. And that's what makes it hard.
Yeah, it makes it alluring and so interesting to me.
Mm-hmm.
this thing too of like just how close we are to as therapists, um in that place where clients will like project their parent on us, and also just the institutional authority that we hold. It is so complex. I'm just thinking of like this conversation between Lila and Evelyn that happens in here, where Evelyn says birth is non-consensual. And at some point she tells Lila that she's bright. And Lila just lights up so big. Like, you think I'm bright? And just even though Lila completely suspects Evelyn, came in here such a rebel, like there's such a tender, vulnerable place in there. And in so many of our clients that they come to us with this vulnerable place that just desperately needs to be like healed, validated, seen, looked at together and held so gently. And then in doing that, we get so much power and have so much power in the lives of our clients by just being
Mm-hmm.
there in that place where all of their vulnerability lives. And of course, we're just humans and we have like our own relationship with what it is to be needed or at that level, or to, you know, yeah, to hold all those things, to be able to hold like that role of the good parent and not exploit it, and not just like carry the goodness for our client, but to help them like own that back for themselves is such a delicate, it's such a delicate place to hold with somebody. It's such a huge responsibility.
Mhm.
Yeah, for real. I think I thought about that like throughout the entire series. I was like, wow, uh, scary
Like,
having this much power. I don't know.
Could you try again? being a
Oh,
being a good enough parent, like creating or hoping to create corrective emotional experiences for our clients, is huge and amazing, and comes from like all of who we are showing up the way we do, and not doing any of the things that Evelyn is doing or that Laura is doing. Now we see Laura is ascending. She's having an ascending moment herself in this episode. This is Laura's ascension, and it's very disturbing. Oh, that reminds me, this is a sidebar, but I'm really appreciating the humor in this show. And Terry comes back in. Y'all remember Terry, who works at the station? And she's at the beginning at Alex's birthday party, and Alex is like flipping burgers or something. And she's like, yeah, someone's not replacing the ink in the printer at work. And she's just like, really? and,
God,
and Alex is just like, well, I think he says like, this is very disturbing, Terry. Like, it's like so these moments of like how serious she takes her responsibility of the supplies in the office. That is really, really well written. And that's also why the show works, because it isn't just all intense drama, trauma
I mean, that is
bonding.
intense drama for Terry, just to say, like that
That
right.
is true.
it
Thank you.
reminds me very much of like Twin Peaks and Nadine with the
With the
silent
cotton
runners.
balls.
Yes,
Yes.
exactly. Yes.
Avery,
Terry
I'm
is
putting it on the
dedicated.
list.
Terry is a character that absolutely would belong on Twin Peaks. Terry could make it in Twin Peaks just fine.
Yeah, it is nice having that comedic relief because it can be very intense, the casual killing can be very intense.
I had a really hard time in this episode. I had to stop, but when I saw that the game between Abby and Lila was coming up, I had to pause there and I was like, okay, I need to like brace myself to watch it. It's so hard to watch for me that like, yeah, like we've talked about already, just how Evelyn attacks connection, how she attacks anything that feels like even it possibly could threaten her power and her hold over somebody. And I mean, I know they were just playing along with it, kind of, but also, ooh, the things they said to each other were so hard and mean. And she opens up that scene with the two of them, Evelyn, by saying, "This is your time." And it's just so painful. It's such a painful mind fuck. Like, this is truly how you fuck up somebody's brain. Like, it is not their time. If they were on their own, they would have done anything but what happened. But she was just 100% controlling and setting the stage for something to happen there that was all about what she needed and not about them at all, while telling them that it's for them. And then at the end is like, that was beautiful. Oh my God. Oh my God.
Thank you for
So
your feedback. Fuck off. No.
Abby says with like the tear rolling down. Oh my God. Oh my God. So
It's so
fucking good.
sad. It's so sad. Like as a former high school teacher, it makes me think about like how important it is to not just like for teens, but also like adults, like to create a space where people can like safely navigate conflict. Because again, like they were using things that were sort of true for them. Lila asked Abby, like, do you think that I'm the reason that you're here? And she was like, no. And then later on, she's like, just bursts out. She's like, well, yeah, yeah. And like, I forget what she says, but like, yeah, agreeing that she's the reason that she's here. And like, that's a part of her truth, right? Like, that's a part of her that they could have worked through in like a therapeutic space and worked through the resentment and like, what am I projecting? How do I own my responsibility in the conflict? But there's just like zero facilitation from Evelyn. It's like the only facilitation is the bell, and like you're rewarded when there's more chaos. It's like the more chaos and rift you can create, the better. You're doing great. If you do that, you're doing great. I'm not going to say anything. You're just going to have to be out here on your own, protecting yourself and throwing mean words at each other, throwing your trauma at each other and breaking each other down. I don't actually have to break you down because I've taught you both to break each other down. That's one of the tactics I see. And I'm
Oh,
like, can we talk about how that's also a tactic that happens societally? Hello, hello, divide and conquer. Like, whoa.
yeah, all these things at the cult small level happen at the cultural large level, like creating the bad other to construct the good other out of and against, and to like jump into the spaces, whatever spaces where there's pain or trauma, and to fill those spaces with something that's self-serving, whether it's consumeristly self-serving or politically self-serving or personally self-serving. Like, so much of our society is built to do all these things, to take personal relational rifts between people, to put the wrong tools in people's hands about how to do conflict, and yeah, all of it.
And the cult, everyone is serving their roles, and it continues. And this is what we all do, is continue to serve our roles for whatever reasons. It's indoctrinated into us, survival, whatever. We're all just participating. And like, what would it look like if we didn't, Jules? Or what would it look like for something different? What if creativity were, how do we bring it in? How do we make it look different?
Yeah, I think what's hard about like this series is that there's no resolution. I think that's the hardest part about it. Like, not that every series has to have a resolution, but it does feel good when that happens, obviously. But I think that's kind of the point.
Mhm.
Like we see, well,
Yeah.
I won't talk much about episode 8 because I know y'all are going to talk about that soon, but I'm just like, I don't know if they're like there's also just like not one way, right? Like to have one way is not the answer to anything that's going on here, anything that's like being reflected in like this larger social historical political time, but it's like I don't know, there's not really any answers, and we really need creativity around that. Like, what could be cool is to think about, like, okay, if you were to create a story about what would be a healing path where a healing path out of Wayward. I almost said pathward, weird. But like what could be cool is to think about that. Like, oh, okay, thought experiment. Like, how would everybody heal from this? Like, what really would it look like? And when you start thinking about it, it's like we would have to do hella shit. Thousands of dollars of therapy. Not that that's the only way, but like I don't know. Like I don't know how to fix the mess.
Yeah. I think there is kind of a machine that's built to do that around cults, that's built to kind of come in post cult and like provide intensive therapy to the people who are coming out of the cult. How do we allegorize that for like the larger society is a much bigger question. I mean, I think in this one we see the phone call where Abby learns that Alex killed Riley actually,
Mhm.
and goes, instead of like helping Riley escape, Alex actually killed this person, and right away goes to like, I can't trust you anymore. If you're on our side, why won't you come with us? And then Alex says, my wife is pregnant. So this takes me back to like pregnancy and childbirth as kind of like this focal point for how we keep repeating. But, this community tried to tackle that exact focal point by not having any babies, and that didn't work either. So like that is what has Alex really pinned down here, is like
Mhm.
this thing of like life keeps going and we keep having babies, and as long as we keep having babies we have to acculturate them in some way and teach them something, and then that's how the cult, whatever the cult or culture is, gets passed down as like there's a new generation. I know like this current like younger generation, there was a time when I was like, really deeply convinced that like all of these paradigms of patriarchy and white supremacy and gender roles was like going to be out because the young people weren't going to go for it. And it's been so deeply disheartening to see like the young people are super going for it. They're like, no, but like so many young people, young assigned male at birth people in particular, are like picking up the torch of patriarchy and carrying it forward and wanting, the most submissive kinds of women. And like the women's right to vote is being questioned like right now in a way that it never has been throughout my lifetime. Just like spins my head around. But like, yeah, each generation feels like an opportunity to go somewhere different that doesn't seem to do that. And that is so frustrating and confusing to me. Like I don't understand in a very real way why folks keep choosing these extremely abusive cult-like cycles of gendered violence and repetitions and all of that shit. It just seems like, I don't know. I will say, like, I want to add here one more thing about brie, even though I know there's no brie explicitly in this episode. I was contemplating brie as I was watching the episode and thinking of it as like just this repetition thing was so stuck with me, and like the repetition of like mothers and parenting. And I was thinking of like how fucking old and tired and sour it is. And I was like, brie is cheese, which is sour milk. But like even sour milk can be elevated to some kind of like sublime level. Brie is like
It's
the
creative.
very creative, elevated, sublime sour milk. But like, how do we do that with the sour milk of all the tired repetitions? I don't know.
Oh
I
my
don't
God,
think
I
we're there
love
yet.
that. I love that. You know, I love it when you bring the brie back in every damn time, Avery. Yeah, as you're talking, I'm thinking about, the cult idea of like, let's just not have babies is just like going downstream and not going upstream and dealing with all the shit. And you have to do that in order for something to shift. And I was thinking about Evelyn's origin trauma around her baby being taken from her, and how instead of going upstream and being like, oh, what are the systems that are creating a world in which my parents would take my baby from me as a teenager? She just goes to the parents and saying that they're bad and wrong and evil. So that becomes the split, as opposed to looking a bit further and having a systemic understanding of that. And that is then what gets unconsciously or very consciously, but in some ways unconsciously recreated in this particular iteration of a cult. And that's what's missing.
Yeah, I think there's so many themes here about like looking at the root and like not just looking at the root, but like looking at the soil. And like in another lifetime, I'm like a super gardener and know what it looks like to regenerate soil and like connect with the earth and all of that. But unfortunately, that has been broken for me and many humans nowadays. But I'm just thinking about like, yeah, the importance of that. Like, what does it really look like for us to do the lineage, like ancestral work? Because in my experience, a lot of the lineage ancestral work, like I've experienced through like spaces that are using plant medicines. And I haven't always had the best experiences. So I think it brings up a question for us as like queer therapists in this space. Like, what does it look like for us to do that vertical healing, like not just like getting to the root, which Evelyn obviously did not do. She just like grew from a branch and then it just became this whole other thing that was entwined with like the lineage of the original Manson lookalike. But like, yeah, what's it going to look like for us to do our own work, do work with our clients around the roots, regenerating the soil, like making that connection to, okay, this is going to sound super woo-woo, like the spirit body of all of us. I don't know, maybe it's like this mycelial network of all of us, who we are as human beings, as a part of nature. It just feels like that's the healing that's called for. I think this show really highlights, especially this episode, like the issues of not doing that, but we still don't know, I think, like as human beings, or I could be wrong. Like I'm open to learn from wise individuals and lineages. Like, what does it really look like to do the deeper work? I don't know. I'm still on a journey, and I love trying to figure that out with clients,
Mm.
and other people. But I think this show really highlights that, like, y'all, it's not working. Like, we're doing the same shit.
I
Still
mean,
don't have
grief is what
answers.
comes to mind here. And I know you said you work with grief, but like this feels like um one of my beloved mentors, Jyoti Rao, wrote a piece on the anti-integrative impulse, basically the impulse. And I'll send you the article, and you can put it in the
Mm.
chat for our listeners. But basically, the impulse that has us othering people and creating dynamics of oppression. And for her, and I know for a lot of folks writing in the field, that's about an avoidance of grief, that we can't grieve truly how terrible these things have been in our lineage, colonization, slavery, like grief from those things is really what I mean. Just last year, Donald fucking Trump was like trying to change the Smithsonian so that slavery didn't look so bad, right? Because like there's such a strong in those folks who want to hold on to domination, avoidance of grief is paramount. We can't look at how bad it was. We can't. So of course we can't ever get to anything logistical like reparations that would just make sense if we were to do the grief work and acknowledge the lineage and the pain that has been for centuries. But we can't do any of that because we can't grieve, and that's exactly what Evelyn doesn't want to do either. She doesn't want to do that for herself, and she takes other people through a process in the leap of trying to skip grief. Basically, they're trying to leap
Yeah.
over grief and past it and just
Yep.
cut cut out parts of the psyche rather than actually allow the process of grieving for that baby and grieving for the parents. And you just, yeah, that's one way to go, but it's not healing. It's not healing.
I think it's interesting. I just conveniently forgot about that part of Evelyn's story, but I'll actually share because that's my style. I'm a birth mother. And so I willingly placed my child in an open adoption. And I don't like experience like my daughter as being taken from me, but like there's a piece of me that like can really relate to that pain that Evelyn must have felt to like have her child taken from her, especially during that time. Like, I mean, I'm assuming that it was like an adoption, a closed adoption. There were so many like adoptions that were closed at that time. Um, and like the piece about grief is like I feel like being with my grief and tending to my grief and being in relationship to the life death life cycles have sort of I think grief opens up this channel like it's like a river and like if you just allow yourself to like surrender to the power of the healing of like the water of the grief and the river, it can take you somewhere else. It can take you to another galaxy of a different way of relating to your life. And it can heal. Doesn't mean like the wound like goes away completely. It's just like this relationship of tending to that is so opposite of like having a dam that we all know like dams are not good for the environment. Like they have destroyed ecosystems. So I just think like, yeah, I agree with you, Avery, that like one of the answers is tending to our grief. It looks different for all of us, but yeah, it brings up this question like, well, what would I have? And I'm also not saying like, oh, I'm better because I tend to my grief and Evelyn did not. Like that's what I'm saying. I'm more saying like, what would it look like at that point in time if Evelyn had the supports to tend to her grief, to hold it together in community in a different way, to really allow those emotions to like transform her and take her somewhere else, rather than putting it up all behind a dam and trying to go some different like pathway. I don't know. So all this to say, I get it. I get the pain and being a birth mother is like a source of like immense joy as well as grief for me. But being with that joy and the grief and the fullness of it, like I think allows me to be healthier holistically. And therefore everybody I interact with, like all of my relations then get to benefit from me being with my grief and my joy.
Yeah, especially, and I'm thinking about your clients. I mean, that's what you're bringing to them so much. Thanks for sharing that, Jules. I really appreciate hearing all about that.
Yeah, I'm like,
Mhm.
I don't know if this is stuff we share on podcasts, but this is
Really?
me and this is how
Yeah.
I think and work. And that's definitely coming up for me thinking about all of this.
I think that's, yeah, that capacity for personal grief is a real, it's really personally important, and also I think it's necessary before, I don't know, I'm just postulating this, and maybe I'm postulating something that doesn't need to be a rule, but it feels to me like it's a big step toward being able to tolerate collective grief and hold collective grief is just being able to hold your own, like what losses do you have in your life? I think helps. If you can look at that, it helps to create space. And I also think it helps to create space for creativity, like we were talking about earlier. That I was reminded of that when you were talking about dams, Jules, and just like how if you cut off something because you don't want to grieve it, and so you build a dam there in order to not experience that grief, you're also building a wall against creativity, I think, in a very real way, because if your emotions can't flow, then that just it tends to dam up more than you're just trying to dam up. If you start building those kinds of closed places in yourself, it's, you might lose other things within that bargain that you're not necessarily planning on.
I don't know how we got here, but I like it.
Me too. And as we're talking, I'm just imagining all the holding that needs and wants to happen in order for the dam not to be created. Like what, like you were saying, Jules, about like what Evelyn might have needed or benefited from, what Laura, even, and I'm thinking a lot about Alex here too. Like he's holding so much rage, and it's coming out in really, really horrible ways for him that's not benefiting his life because of not being able to whatever grieve his younger part that couldn't, his younger self that couldn't, that was frozen, and grieving the fact that he didn't have parents that you know maybe we would want him to have, that they weren't available to him, just like all of these places, all of these places of being stuck, and that really none of these characters have support around.
Yeah, it's sort of like a pseudo support. It's like an illusion.
Mm-hmm.
Like they see it and they experience it, but it's like it could just, it's not real. So like real support and community. And
Mm-hmm.
yeah, I really like this show because I love shows that show like the complexity of a human being. Because it's like if with even Alex's character, like, we get to hear his history and understand it a little bit, but there are moments like where violence does happen like on his behalf, and it's like, whoa, like even someone who's a potentially like, perceived as like a good character could do something bad.
Mm-hmm.
And so, yeah, I really appreciate the show for that reason because it really, I don't know, there's so much like undercurrent of like what does it mean to be good, bad, like what's actually healing, like how do we hold all of our layers, like how do we hold all of the shadow within each like character and then the larger cult dynamic. And it just makes me think about like, yeah, this particular historical political social time where like so much shadow is coming out, and how do we hold all of it, like we can't just like look at the light, or we can't just like look at the darkness, like we gotta hold it all
Mm-hmm.
and then somehow
Mm-hmm.
grieve, I don't know, and then somehow like heal. I don't know what we're doing, but we're living. I'm existing. No, it's overwhelming,
Uh,
but I feel seen by that overwhelm.
yeah.
There's like something in my spirit that's like, I feel really seen by this casual killing. I don't know. It's weird. Do other people feel like that? Can people
Um,
comment and say like, yeah, I feel like that? Like,
yeah, I do. I do. I mean, and I play a lot of video games too. So I mean, that's another way in which I'm constantly told that my murderous impulses are being normalized, and
right.
perhaps they also are. I had a piece, you brought up the shadow. I had a piece in here what I wrote about, like I spent some time just like journaling about this thing that felt so present for me in this particular episode of just like the ways that we try to get out of cycles and we end up repeating cycles. In astrological terminology, that's thought about a lot in terms of the planet Uranus and Uranian cycles, because
Mm.
Uranus is associated with revolution, but almost inevitably in a revolution you build back the exact same thing you just overthrew. Very much like, the
Ugh.
Napoleonic Revolution, where like he wanted to overthrow the aristocracy, but then he just made himself fucking emperor as soon as he overthrew the aristocracy. And so I wrote about the unconscious and the shadow. It feels like a very like Jungian unconscious shadow phenomenon, where like kind of like the harder you try to squeeze something out, the more it creeps through the cracks, and
Mm-hmm.
you can't banish something that's just not a real thing, but it's something we keep trying to do. You can't, and it's really vexing for people who I think want to see lasting change, because the question of how to create change is so much more, it's so much bigger and more meta, like there's so many meta layers to how to
Right.
create lasting change. Like it does have to go to the root and to the past and the verticals and the horizontals that you're talking about, Jules. Like I really
Mm-hmm.
see that, but like having a project that's all like doing that, I think my mind goes to this like impossible idea of like, okay, what's the project we can create that will do all that at the same time? But that just doesn't happen. So then it's just like happening a little bit at a time over time. And at the same time, there's this tide of fascism that's always fighting back against it. That just wants to keep things the fucking same. And it's just, yeah, it's wild, the phenomenon of all of that, like how impossible it is to create something truly new, or how impossible it feels. I don't want to say that it is, but like, you know astrological authors have been writing about that for a long time, like, in the context of Uranus, it's been discovered now for almost 200 years. That's part of
You're
its.
blowing my mind with this. Uranian cycles of revolution. What are you even saying, Avery? How do I learn about this? Oh my goddess. Like, come on. You're so amazing. Jeez.
It's getting existential in here.
I'm loving it.
Can't help it.
But
By the
I,
way, also, we have just gone into a period of Uranus and Gemini, which the United States has never not been in one of its major wars during the cycle of Uranus and Gemini. So
Fuck.
there's that.
well, we are recording this on January 4th. So that overwhelm you're talking about, Avery, I think that is exactly what makes like a cult story or like a cult like vibe so alluring, is that it's so overwhelming to be in awareness of it all. Like it's so overwhelming to be in awareness of it all. It's like so easy to be like, okay, cool. You have a guidebook? Cool. You know how to heal? Cool. I'm gonna just be on your team because everything else out there feels really scary and uncertain. So I'm gonna join your team. Seems pretty cool for the most part. I'm just gonna maybe set aside some stuff that I don't fully agree with to just be a part of this little safe little spot over here. And yeah, we're gonna be good. I don't have to think about the larger things to chew on. So I think that's exactly why it's like so alluring. All the different cults, larger and subcults, what people think are actual cults. I think that's part of what makes it alluring.
Yeah, and they're not like you don't take what you want or what you like and leave the rest. You just drank the Kool-Aid. And that's the
Exactly.
problem because the Kool-Aid tastes delicious when you're so thirsty. When you're so thirsty that you're going to pass out from dehydration. Yeah, and that's the trouble of the panacea. And I think about it too, like in a tactical level with like how behavioral models of therapy are the normalized thing because you can measure X, Y, and Z. And it's like when you get to Z, then you've leaped, then you're ascending and then you've leaped and then you graduate from therapy. And it's like, what? I mean,
The
I would love,
listeners,
so go ahead.
I was gonna say the listeners can't hear, but my eyes are like coming out of my skull. The ascend and the leap part. It's true. Okay, that's it.
I mean, if there was really, but it's like what you're saying. If there was really any kind of healing modality that I was like, oh, I can go through this and then I can actually, of course, we would want that. Who doesn't want a panacea? Especially in a culture that's like, take this drug and you'll be better. You'll be fixed. Take this therapy and you'll be fixed. It's like, it's perpetuating that narrative that's a false narrative that I think really gets a lot of people in trouble around what they think true healing is, like we were talking about earlier, and particularly healing from trauma. Just come with me and you will really be done with your trauma. You didn't do it with Evelyn, you can do it with me. I'm the medicine now. And none of that is real and none of that is true. And guess what? Life is suffering and life is overwhelming and life is flooding. And is there magic and creativity and collective wisdom and glory and transcendence? Yes. And do we want to find it? Yes. And that's what and like what brings me joy and what brings my communities joy. And like that's the thing in the face of all of this bullshit.
I mean, it's hard to keep anybody in the complexity. I think about too, like the other, the other thing that our program at CIIS is known for, besides the folks who are coming to us to do psychedelic therapy someday, are folks who really want to, aside from the folks who are really invested in social justice, a lot of people want to work in these transpersonal modalities that also like emphasize kind of like ascending, transcending, rising above, like using the larger kind of spiritual psyche in order to cope with and sometimes maybe escape all of the things here on earth in the material world that are really challenging. And so yeah, again, it's hard to hold that balance. I find like it's so important to be able to have access to something that's larger than yourself
Oh,
in
yeah,
order to cope with the complexity of life. That's an
absolutely.
immense resource for myself and for so many
Mm-hmm.
others. And it's hard to stay in that weird, yeah, kind of integrated place of like, yes, I can hold that there's a reality bigger than myself that's holding me, and also like my actions really matter, and the
Mm-hmm.
complexity of my circumstances and my identities and my social context really matters, and that, all of that kind of like healing in the material world just takes constant work,
Mm-hmm.
every day, all the time, in all my relationships, like that is not easy to really like, yeah, it's not easy to be with that instead of like the fantasy of like, oh, I can let go of this someday and it'll all be behind me. It'll
Mm-hmm.
be like it never happened.
It'll be like it never happened. Oh my
It'll be
God.
like it never happened.
Oh
That'd be a good DJ intro, I think. No, just kidding. I'm not gonna do that.
I love it.
my. I'm so excited for your DJing, Jules.
Me
Um,
too.
there's one more thing that I wanted to just mention that I didn't mention earlier before we wrap up, which is I know it's a downer, but I feel like it's important, especially in the realm of what we've been talking around being a part of the systems and also being outside of it, and in terms of like subversiveness and queer subversiveness, which is in that same conversation I think that Alex is talking about the timer to go off to take his shot, or maybe it's earlier anyway, but he looks at the ring and says like, oh, this is just a symbol, we can't legally do it because they
Hmm.
can't legally get married because it's 2003. And like,
Wow.
whatever feelings about marriage, I have a whole lot of things, but just thinking about the legal implications of that, particularly if they're having a child together and all of these things, like this is another thing that's swirling around the story of being queer and trans in 2003. And a lot of it is still happening, obviously, and is scary, but important to mention.
Like, I think we've been talking about the antidote to like, I don't know, healing some of these wounds. And I don't know, it might be like biased as a queer person, but I feel like a lot of like antidote to things, or okay, I was gonna say a lot of antidote to things is just being queer. Or being subversive, or
Yes.
being like, I just think like it, thinking about the time frame for Alex and for Laura, like I just think it's so brave, like to be queer parents, especially in the context that they're in. And like to me, what it means to be queer, I mean, I tell this to all of my clients on my like intro call is like, to me, I work as a queer therapist. What it means is like we're doing that work. You were kind of talking about it, Avery, earlier of like deprogramming and reprogramming. Not that there has to be a program, but like that's how our minds work, y'all. Like they run on these like programs and stuff. So like when I think about the antidote, I think about like what it means to be queer, which to me is like deconstructing everything that I've been programmed to think about life, relationships, the universe, and really figuring out and recreating a new narrative of what I believe to be true and like living that. Um, and I don't know, I think maybe that's the healing part of this show, maybe like is that amidst all of this chaos, like Alex and Laura, I mean, their relationship isn't perfect, obviously, but they continue to be queer and unapologetically queer and just like fucking doing it. I don't know. It's kind of beautiful. So again, holding that complexity of like all the things that are dark and shadowy, and then like this bravery, like this courage, like to be you, to be queer, to be trans, like within this really fucked up ass world.
It's really powerful. I mean, I myself, like, I have so many questions these days about how much queerness has moved the dial on hetero and cis normativity versus how much it has just like capitulated to and been assimilated into. And I mean, there's no like one way or the other. Like, it's a complex, just like any assimilation, it's a complex version of both. And like, we are in here now, and queer values are leaking out into the society as we are more a part of it, and I love that. And also, queer normativity is more and more, like there are different looks that has. So yeah, that's a complex process that I definitely feel alive for me in this series, period, like in a way that my mind will probably be sorting through for years. Like, what is this series saying or not trying to say, but accidentally saying about queer normativity and queer families? And at that time, in the early 2000s, I think it was maybe a time when I felt like both like gay marriage was totally inevitable and also still really blown away that that felt like it was going to be true and that it felt like that was where we were headed. I forget when Prop 8 happened in California, and in California we voted down queer marriage. Was that like 2008?
I think it was
2000,
2008. Uh-huh. That
2008.
sounds right.
So this was well before that,
Hmm.
but it was starting to just like pick up more and more momentum. But yeah, never thought I would see that. Like when I was a kid in the 80s and a young person in the 90s, like never would have thought. But I think past 2000, it started to feel like absolutely that's a thing that's going to happen, even though folks were still fighting it at that time. I don't know. We go forward and then we don't. We just had a vote in California last year in 2024, or I guess like 2 years ago now in 2024, to see about putting gay marriage back on the ballot. And 40% of people still voted against gay marriage, almost the same as the number in 2008 that voted gay marriage down. Just more people have swung, there's more people are still here to vote for gay marriage, but there's still like 40% of voters in California still would say no to that. If they could say no to it again, they would do it.
And it's like,
Wow.
what? But Avery, I
Um,
really agree with you that a lot of the tension in this show is about this struggle of how much do we want to fit in and be a part of, cis heteronormative society, and how much of a how much of our relationship, meaning Alex and Laura, is about our queerness and our subversiveness, and how do we make sense of that? How are we a queer couple that is going to have a baby, queer trans couple that's going to have a baby, but also ostensibly potentially passing as a cis straight white couple at the same time? There's a
uh,
lot of
Right.
like,
he's a cop.
and he's a cop, damn it.
And also, just to spin it off a little bit, like Laura uses her subversiveness or like her archetype of being different to actually manipulate people and to wrap them into another generation of cultish bullshit. So it's kind of like again, like both the good, the bad, the light, the shadow. Like amazing that
Mhm.
they're queer and they're living this, yeah, kind of, yeah, very like white hetero life, but they're still queer. And then, yeah, there's layers of it. Like there's the shadow, and then there's the light, and then the shadow and the light. And how do we hold it all?
Just loving that so much. That shadow parts, the split off shadow parts that you're bringing in today, Jules. Like, it's so we cannot disavow those parts of ourselves. This show is a reminder of that. It's like, here's a mirror. What's going on? You got to look at
Right.
all of it, all of it.
It's like the opposite of it's what is it? Well, it's like it will be it never happened.
It'll be like it never
It'll
happened.
be like it never happened. I feel like the opposite, like the healing is in like it'll be like it happened. Like we're gonna look at what happened. Like maybe we should do that.
It'll be like all of it happened.
Yeah, the healing will be like it all happened.
Mhm. Ooh, I like that. I just got chills.
Yeah, I love that too. I was like, that's the thing we can think about in life is like, how do we act like it all happened?
But then it's also like, am I just saying that in response to like a healing that's in opposition to the other? You know, it's like so hard to get outside of the binary.
Oh my
Mm.
God, you're so right. Yeah, I hear that. Yeah.
Uh, I don't even know what we talked about, but like it was
I-
cool.
It was really cool. And like my mind is blown. Every listener's mind is
Same.
blown. Like, yeah, all of our minds are blown in such great ways. Not in overwhelming ways, in exciting ways, and maybe in overwhelming ways, which is fine too. But like lots of really exciting places that we went and got into the big themes, which I would expect nothing less with you, Jules, and your brilliant
Oh,
fucking mind. And I love talking to you so much. Thank you.
likewise. Thank you for having me.